Welcome everyone. Welcome to Saturday Real Talk with Joseph Brownlee. Welcome to the show. Let me get this camera set up right. Not the best cameraman, but I try to do what I can do. Loud bed, I do these in my room. I'm going to be using different areas, maybe my kitchen area and different directions of the house. As I do this, my shows. Okay, slow connection. I can see it's a slow connection. But what I'm going to be talking about were the ones that has been checking out my YouTube. I've been talking about my struggle with MDD, better known as maladaptive daydreaming. I will be doing this off and on. I'm not going to make a long series out of it, but I will be doing this off and on and sending it out to certain ones, and also putting it out up there on YouTube. But if you haven't seen my previous shows, I advise you I recommend you to go back and check out my YouTube. I will also have them on Facebook Reels. Check those out and everything. I made about 4 of them. One of them with a Bible right in front of them. And I recommend you to go there and just check out my last 4 shows on YouTube. Without any further ado, I don't want to keep this long, because what I am doing, I'm not editing this or nothing like this. I'm just going off the cuff. I'm really opening up myself to try to help someone, because what I've been going through for over 50 years, I'm about 90%, something like that, delivered from this MDD. And like I said, go to my last shows and you'll see what I'm talking about. My YouTube is based on Christian perspective. It's not a solid one size fit all type of YouTube channel. But everything will be looked at in a Christian or biblical perspective. Music, different topics, just different things on my YouTube channel. Bible study as well. So let's get right into that. MDD, for the ones that don't know what MDD is an acronym for maladaptive daydreaming. Excessive daydreaming. Now, I know people may say, man, daydreaming is normal, and everybody daydreams. That's so true. Everybody does daydream. But maladaptive daydream, mala means more like excessive or extreme daydreaming. Something which I suffered with for over 50 years. I'm 61 years old, be 62 in June. Over 50 years. Off and on. My worst years was childhood and my teen going up to adults. I talked about my teen in my last shows on YouTube. Right now, I want to talk about something that many probably never talked about when it comes to MDD, maladaptive daydreaming. Is my journey in teenhood, mid-teens, older teen to adulthood. Those years was my drug years. Meaning when I smoked a lot of pot and I done a lot of drinking and a lot of crazy stuff, and going up into that time. See, those years was mainly my drug years, which was my more extreme daydreaming times. Reason being because I was smoking weed then, while I was doing my MDD stuff, So that's why I can remember it more, and I know why it's more extreme than it was when I was younger. Because I wasn't doing drugs when I was younger, 7, 8, 9 years old. I started doing drugs maybe between, I say about 13. I started smoking weed and drinking and stuff like that. You know. So that's why I want to talk about this I want to really get into this part of MDD, which you don't hear. At least I haven't seen too much on YouTube or other outlets. Being high while you're doing MDD. Being high or getting high while you're doing MDD. I got a lot of things that I got right here. I want to go right through this. Now, I always usually have a disclaimer. This is not to lift up marijuana. I'm not into cannabis. I'm not into marijuana. I think it's not good for you, but that's my opinion. But I smoked a lot of marijuana to the point that it affected my MDD. I want to talk about a lot of things because if you don't remember, even if I mentioned it, I also struggle with ADHD and autism. And I think ADHD is the main reason that set off my MDD. That's what I really believe, but that's just anecdotally. I'm speaking anecdotally. But let me get to this right here. And I titled this, and I got a lot of different notes broken down that I may not be able to get through all of them today because I don't want to make this a long movie. How I was able to get more deeper into my daydreams when I was high. High means smoking pot. Smoked a lot of weed. They call it different things today, or cannabis or whatever like that. But it's smoking weed. I smoked a lot of weed in my mid-teens to my older years, 17, 18, all the way up to my adult years. You know, I've been off drugs close to over 35 years now. I'm smoking weed, but I'm just talking about. And that time I was smoking weed, I was still struggling with MDD. Matter of fact, I got into more of my MDD maladaptive daydream when I did smoke weed. And why it felt more like an accomplishment and why things are more visual. Let me just read out some things right here. My disclaimer, I'm not a doctor or a therapist, and I'm not giving medical advice. This is my lived experience and what I noticed in my own mind and body. I want to get that out there. This is no doctor's advice, and I like to give disclaimers. I don't want nobody thinking I'm glorifying glorifying marijuana or anything like that. Because I'm most definitely not. I'm not doing that at all. Okay. What was it like? Now, this is my real experience. When I smoked weed, my maladaptive daydreaming didn't slow down. It turned up. It felt like my brain went from regular TV to a big screen. Everything got louder inside, clearer inside, and more important inside. The fantasy didn't feel like a random thought anymore. It felt like a place I could step into. Now, the best way I can explain it is this. Weed didn't give me new dreams. It gave my old dreams a power boost. It made the pull stronger. Now, the pull means the effects, the images, the excitement. The dopamine became high. You know your dopamine gets real high when you're high. So that's what I mean by that, okay? The scene smoother and the emotions heavier. It felt good because it felt like relief. It felt like I finally had something that worked. Something that made life feel less boring, less heavy, and less plain. I'm going to stop right there because I got different sections I want to break down. This is my real experience. The best way I can explain this era of MDD, and this is going to when I became a believer, when I became a Christian, over 30-something years, close to 40 years ago. And I still struggle through that. But my biggest struggle is what I'm talking about right now, the era of drugs. The era of drugs. The pull. It's a gray area, so I cannot definitively get straight into when it started or how it started, anything like that, you know. I know a lot of people may want to know about that, you know. When I started getting high, I know I started around 13 and 14 when I first experienced smoking pot. We called it pot, we called it bowl. Here in Chicago, we called it weed. Never marijuana or cannabis. We just called it bowl, weed, pot. You know, different names they call it now. But I'm going to tell you something. When I went into my dreams, I like to call them fantasies because they were fantasies. My fantasies became more real when I was high. And you probably, ones that smoked pot or drink or didn't done different type of drugs or whatever like that, you probably know what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about MDD high. And I could just talk for myself when I say MDD high or being high while I'm making a movie in my maladaptive daydreaming. It enhanced my images. It enhanced my dopamine lift, the reward, one of the neurotransmitters that rewards your body with feelings and emotions. The dopamine lift, because that's what the marijuana and different alcohol, drugs and different things does. It just enhances your emotions and your feelings and even your thinking. There's pros and cons to that. So just imagine you already struggle with your mind in a world that I lived in a majority of my life. In a fantasy world. And I mean that literally. The majority of my life I lived in a fantasy world, even through my Christianhood. So my realistic look of the world was my dreams, was my fantasies. It wasn't the real world, it was my made up world. Because I was so closed in, I was so, introverted, because of my ADHD and my focus and everything was off. It took me a while to learn things, but I'm going to get into that later when it comes to ADHD. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which I also struggle with. Just imagine that and your daydreaming growing up. It's bad enough, even though it didn't feel bad sometimes, but it felt awkward. It felt like I was, the term we use then, retarded or mentally something wrong with me. Adding marijuana, a drug, to your already messed up mind. And people could try to be nice and not say, but it was messed up. My dreams wasn't often evil or horror movies. I wasn't into nothing like that. It was basically real life, especially when I got older in the mid-teens and the teens. So just think adding smoking pots. This is marijuana. I can't speak about other drugs. I didn't do a lot of other drugs. Weed, at that time I loved smoking weed because it hid my introvertness. Weed brought out someone that I always wanted to be. At least I thought I wanted to be when I smoked pot. That's my reason for smoking pot. It made me feel more confident. It made me feel more in the crowd because I felt cool then in the day growing up, and hanging out with people and different things. It brought my confidence with females and stuff like that. Even though I didn't have a lot of female girlfriends, but I did in my dream. But a lot of ladies was attracted to me, but I was too shy. I was too closed in. Very low self-esteem. Most introverts have that. I suffered from introverts because I'm sure that's part of my ADHD. And, but when I got high, not only it made me more confident and more bolder and felt better about myself, I put all that into my MDD. So when I created my fantasies in my head, it was almost like 3D, 4D, high definition, man. I mean, it was like high definition, man. Because before I started getting high, I used to MDD quite a bit. I MDD daily, every day, for years, every day. I did not skip a day without MDD. It was just some of my movies was longer than others. But when I did, back then, my daydreams were more fuzzy. They was kind of gray. the characters didn't come out like I really wanted them to, but they was visual enough to me because I'm the only one looking at it anyway. It ain't like I'm making a movie and everybody look at it. So I had to really focus harder to make my characters. When I started getting high, that made it more easier for me to develop and create scenes and memorize because man, MDD with me, I can remember images, but I can't remember plots or writing because I'm not a writer. So everything, if I made a MDD movie, especially when I was high, at that particular time I made it, if this makes sense, I remember it then, but I can't go back and remember the line because I never wrote nothing on paper. MDD is not about, well, for me, it wasn't about writing things on paper or writing scripts or, anything, or dialogues. It just came in my head. So it wasn't based on me memorizing what I wrote and everything like that because, like screenwriters and different people, the way they do things. When you are in an MDD mode, everything happens right then and there. And that's why it was much harder for me if I was doing a series, especially a soap opera series, to go back and try to remember what they said. I have to recreate and just make it like that. So it's very strange and weird when in my world of MDD. I'm not talking about it. Remember, this is my experience. JoJo's head, my world of struggling with MDD. Okay? I'm going to read something else here. Then why it felt so good. Part of the good feeling was the escape. Real life had rules. Real life had pressure. Real life had embarrassment, stress, and people watching. But in my daydreams, check this out, listen closely. My daydream world, I was in charge. I can control the story, control the timing, control the outcome, and control how I felt. Remember, I can control the timing, I can control the story, I can control the outcome, and I can control how I felt. When I was high, smoking weed, that control felt even stronger. The fantasy felt more rewarding. It felt like my brain was saying, yes, this is it. Stay here. That's the hook. I'm not making this up, okay? And the other part of this, weed made my body feel different. It showed some things down. It slowed some things down and sped other things up. I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit. It made me more sensitive to music, memories, and emotions. So when I stepped into a scene, the scene didn't just play in my head, it hit my whole system. True story. I can remember this like yesterday when I was high. Because those were some of my most solitude times. Solitude as I'll disappear. I wouldn't hang out with nobody. I'll make up excuses. I don't remember the excuses, but I will find a reason to stay home, during those times. So I wasn't a person going out a lot then in my mid-teens. Because remember, my real world to me was my fantasies, my MDD. Many people knew I was different. They knew I was closed in. I had a temper because I was so closed in because of my struggles with ADHD and then MDD, which I believe ADHD kicked it off. I'm going to get more into that in my next YouTube. And I want you all to just listen to this. Some of you may be MDD, some of you may be OCD or ADHD or autism. It doesn't matter. But you probably can relate to what I'm saying and what I'm talking about. But getting high put so much quality in my movies that I was able to do series for years and years and years, especially soap operas. Changed names, made black people whiter, white people black, and different things like that. It was very out there, man. I had some thoughts, not horror. I had some creative thoughts, more creative than Stephen King. But not horror. But when I did create, I didn't exclude the bad things. After most of my teens and mid-teens, adults, Maladaptive Daydreaming. It wasn't cartoons anymore. It wasn't Prince Planet. It wasn't Space Giants and all that stuff that I used to get so involved in. It was real life. I just recreated it. I was better. I was smaller at the time. I always been heavy. You know, I just made myself look different. I gave myself a new name. My name was Joe Warner, and I got it off of all my children. And not Joe Warner, but the Cliff Warner. They used to be. I don't know why, but I was watching soap operas then, and I just put all that together. See, you when it comes to MDD, you have secret things that you looked at that your homies would laugh at. At that time, but I made everything as a movie. I'm going to get more into that, and I want to talk about continue why it felt so good. It felt so good because it was an escape from me and my introvertness and shyness and my closed in type of ways, which I know now is ADHD because I couldn't focus. I had a hard time putting two and two together. I couldn't count good. Many people don't know that. I couldn't focus. My concentration was off. That's why it took me years to learn how to tie my shoes. Where everybody knew how to tie their shoes. I couldn't tell them that people tie their shoes in front of me. If my shoes were untied, man, I'm too embarrassed because I didn't know how. I couldn't put it all together. I couldn't connect it. The same as telling time when a big hand and a short hand, I couldn't resonate. I couldn't put it together. So that's the ADHD in me. And all that was going on as I researched now before my MDD. So I believe anecdotally that's what kicked out my MDD because I closed myself in so much because of my ADHD. Now I know ADD is like attention. You know, you have a hard time paying attention, but it's not hyper like ADHD. Uh, ADHD, hyperactivity. You have ADD, you have ADHD. I had ADHD. And I wasn't so much hyper, but my attention and my concentration and my focus was not there. And so when I started my MDD back then, I believe, as I think about it, as I research it, sometimes you have to backpedal to stack. You have to get an interview. I had myself interviewed and it brought back some memory. I never wanted to go back and find out why it started. That's not important to me. I just know when I was doing it, and at that time, it kept me away from a lot of people because I felt like everybody was advanced over me. Because most people I knew or hung around, they knew how to tie shoes, they knew how to tell time. You know, they had girlfriends and stuff like that. I did too, but at that time, it just seemed like they knew more than me. They probably did, but that's how closing in I was. But when I got into my mid-teens and adult, your older years, that's when I started smoking pot, smoking weed. And the smoking pot for me and drinking is to just keep me chilly. No doubt. Not because I loved it. It just helped me to create somebody that I always wanted to be back then. So I'm going to get more into that, and I hope you guys just really stay tuned that I'm going to be talking about more of smoking weed. My experience, you might have another experience. Leave a comment while doing MDD. God bless you. Love y'all. Peace out. If you want to join my Facebook, feel free to just join it and stuff like. I'm not here to get a lot of analytics or anything like that, but I would love a lot more views and people's comments, and someone may be struggling with MDD or maybe ADHD, because those two that I'm very familiar with because I struggled with that in my life the majority of my life. So I don't know everything else. I don't know too much about OCD, even though I know OCD is like an obsessive compulsion, but that. It could be in the family of MDD and maybe ADHD, but I don't know too much about that. I know more about MDD and ADHD and some autism. And I'm getting into all of that in my upcoming videos. Real Talk with Joseph. Love y'all. God bless. Please subscribe. Check out my videos. I have music on there. I have just random things I talk about, you know. And I'm going to be doing a lot of Bible study and different things on my YouTube, which I've been doing maybe since 2024. I will not be only talking about this. I talk about different things, but I wanted to get this out there because that's what I do now. I think it needs to be awareness of mental disorder. I'm very interested in mental disorder because I am a mental disorder person, myself. So God bless you all. Please check out my channel. You could be mentally something wrong with you, but be still used by God and very creative. No doubt about that. So never think you can be used by God. God uses you uniquely. I'm not talking about he's guiding you to do all this. I'm just saying he still will allow you to do things even more, you know. So these are for the ones that believe it. If you're not a Christian, please don't let that stop you. Please check out the channel. You can get a lot out of this, I'm pretty sure, because it's just a regular channel. It's just like I'm talking to someone in my living room. Nothing fancy, no fancy bells and whistles, okay? So stay tuned for more of Real Talk with Joseph. I also have a podcast before I go called Body of Christ Real Talk. Everything looked at the biblical perspective. It's audio. And I have a Bible teaching podcast called Connecting the Dots. You want to hear some more about that? Learn the Bible, rightly divided, mid-acts dispensational way, or want to hear a podcast that talks about different things in a biblical perspective, just leave a comment and I will send you my two podcasts as well as my YouTube. God bless you. Love you all. Peace out.